Well, hello. Anybody who might be here. So, it's been about 5 days since my last cast, and basically, I went to a wedding in Florida. And a couple things about Florida. It is nice down there. It is like 7 degrees. You smell cigarettes everywhere. And I like the smell of cigarettes. If you don't like it, I can see not liking the place. Incredibly diverse. An actual diversity, not just like Maryland. Oh, yeah, we're going to keep all the white regions and black regions in different spots, and nobody can cross over unless you're like really suave. Um, no, everybody's mixed together. It's great. There's Cubans and Jewish people and black people and rednecks. And if you're going there from Maryland, guess what group you're going to get along with best, or at least identify as you go through the mall and everything. Yeah, it's the black people. You culturally you're the most similar to them out of the other groups, but it's just Florida's a terrific place. So went to this fancy mall on before the wedding, and when I say fancy, I mean everybody was a lot of beautiful people. Not all beautiful, but a solid 20% but beautiful men and women. And just very clean and posh, and a jacket was $600, which I would never ever buy. But it's cool to go someplace that has a jacket that's that expensive. It just feels nice. Then I went to the wedding. It was nice. There was dancing and singing, drinking, good amount of drinking, all the typical wedding shenanigans. My cousin got married. He's been dating his now wife 7 years, so it's kind of like about time. But it was a good wedding. So I got back. Meanwhile, plane ride there and back, I read this book called The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Really, basically, this isn't giving any spoilers because this is kind of how it starts. You have 6 students in the class, and one of the 5 of them murder the final one. So it's all the lead up to it, and then all of the consequences. And it kind of opens up with that, so you kind of know what's going to happen. So, a few things. One, I initially hated the main character, the narrator, but you get over it, and he's just kind of a watcher character. I think Great Gatsby, I forget the character's name, but it's like the main character of the voice character of Great Gatsby, who's just watching everything happen. So there's a really good job on making you understand why you would want to kill somebody. Like they really make the one bunny a very killable character, and they really build it up well, steadily building small irritation over small irritation, building it up and up and up into something that's actually quite you can see killing. You can understand, especially with the motivations of why they would have to. Now, I'm not going to give away too much here, but it does a very good job with that. So I would say a solid A book for the first half. So I'm reading this for a book club. My cousins and I, and my dad, and a couple other people, I think, are doing a book club because this is supposed to be a book clubbish book. And I can definitely see it. It's discussion of. Well, that's the thing. So anyway, I'll go into my final review. Second half is weaker. She basically wanted to end it a certain way, and the initial consequences didn't go far enough for the characters to end up in the place they would end up. So she had to tack something on. If you're on anime, you know the type of thing that's being tacked on. If you're into anime. That's as much of a hint as I'm going to give, but it's hinted at throughout the entire first half of the book. But it does seem a little bit tacked on, like she needed it to duct tape it together. I get why she did it, but it's still her covering up the story, not going quite where she wanted it to go. Also, a little bit too much like random, unlucky stuff happening throughout the entire book, but still, it's worth reading. Good for a book club book, I guess I would say. And the entire point is it's kind of a dark parody fantasy of going to an elite college. So yes, it's a parody. They're all, I guess, intellectuals and such, and then they make these stupid decisions, and they're kind of way too self-aware and stuff, and that's a part of it. But I really think it's a form of wish fulfillment because these characters, this isn't giving anything away. They're they are actually sublimely brilliant in their admittedly useless fields. So they are very, 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 very smart and they're geniuses and everything. And at the same time, they're getting drunk every single day and going to all these parties and fucking and everything else, all the time. And the thing is that I know people like that, but they're usually not actually geniuses. So to be both a genius and somehow cool enough to go to all the parties, it's like, oh, you get to be a quirky, you get to eat your cake and have it too. You get to be a quirky intellectual, and you also who's also partying it up crazy in a crazy way. And that's kind of the fantasy, isn't it? That a lot of people have. You want to be the super intellectual type genius who's also rocking it socially, and but actually be the genius and actually get the social benefits of being cool, even though you're self-consciously, I'm not cool, even though you're going to all these parties, you're obviously kind of connected. So it's a fantasy. It is a fantasy. And the entire darkness of the story is really just an excuse to have a escapist, really an excuse for escapism. It's no less escapism than a fantasy novel with magic or a bad TV show, whatever. It's the same type of fantasy. Actually, in fact, it's worse because fantasy heroes tend to be more grounded in how they relate to the world. Like they might be defeating the dark demon lord, but they're still dealing with individual relationships and trying to get through them and understand people in the real world, not these magic genius party types, you know. So overall, worth reading. If you are forced to read a book club type book instead of something actually good like science fiction or fantasy, pretty good. I didn't cringe too much, which is a good sign. And yes, the character is unlikable at the beginning, but you do get over it. Now, what's interesting to me is that it is clearly an inspiration for the Magicians, which is a fantasy trilogy that basically takes the Dark Secret history, mixes it with Chronicles of Narnia and Harry Potter, and makes a pretty good fantasy book. Except that kind of accomplishes. I like happy stories, and Magicians is by no means a happy trilogy. It's very, very like dark, but there is character growth, and there is getting better over time and becoming a better person. This didn't really have that. This just basically just lands everybody in a half life, basically, and they never get out of it. So the Magicians kind of take secret history and then lets people age into something better than what they were. So I read that. Fantasy, the anime I watched this week was I think the teacher got to joins the party of his students. Basically, the guy is taken advantage of by his adventuring party, quits his adventuring party, and immediately gets recruited into the party of his three former students that he taught like 6 months before, like a couple years before or something. It's kind of vague about that. It's nice escapism. It's like, oh, he's actually really good at stuff. And he's a support class, but he's actually like super, super good at being a support. And the old party fails without him. So kind of the same idea as like the guy who left the Demon Lord's army, or the anime Isekai, where the foreign businessman becomes one of the four generals. Same idea. Underappreciated guy goes to a different world or changes something and then is appreciated. You want to know what the male fantasy is? It's not being surrounded by beautiful women. Even though that's part of the fantasy, that is part of the fantasy, but it's not the entire fantasy. No, the fantasy is being appreciated. And I think that's what people miss when they analyze anime. It's the fantasy is not the bulging muscles or being surrounded by beautiful women who all want to get with you, or even fighting a dark lord. No, the fantasy is being appreciated. And I think that's what's missing for, well, at least for men nowadays, is that we don't feel appreciated. And I think that's what anime speaks to. Anime is basically a fantasy, no more of a fantasy than Secret History, of being appreciated for what you can bring to the table, whether it being is just being supportive of other people. Like, there's something very, I don't know if Japanese or not, it might be just being racist, but there's something of substance of being of the respect they some of these animes give to being a support class. Because you can't always be the hero, but you can help people, right? Um, and I'm enjoying that. Final thing to talk. So, I mean, it's anime. It's a waste of time, but like, it's. I think it's better than reality TV. It's better than most TV. Now, it's better than most books. Like the actual lessons being taught are not bad lessons, and if you're grading a fiction by the lessons, then anime is pretty good. Final thing: Trump is negotiating with peace, basically, in the Ukraine and Russia. And all these people, all these smart people said, "Oh, you can't negotiate one-on-one with Putin. You can't negotiate peace with Russia. You can't do that. You're surrendering. How dare you?" Like, okay, guys, we did your plan for 3 years. 200,000 people, probably a lot more, died because of your plan, and it is getting nowhere near success. Like, again, what are you expecting to happen? Oh, Ukrainians magically start winning on the battlefield against Russia's fortified positions and take over Donbass and Crimea? Is that your plan? Well, if you plan to take over Crimea, that's fortified to shit's end. The other thing that could be, I don't know what the situation is in Donbass, but Russia's been making gains, not losses, over the past year. They are winning. So you're planning to end the war by Ukraine winning and then killing Putin and unicorns and ponies everywhere? Yeah, that's not going to happen. And your fantasy is costing people billions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of lives. Ukraine's future, basically half the Slavic ethnicity. Hello, I am affected. I want Slavs to be around. My cat's trying to read the Secret History. It's just hilarious. But yeah, stupid people, midwits. And meanwhile, Trump is like, okay, I'm going to make a deal. Oh no, well, then that's never going to happen. That's impossible. And then they're changing to, well, it could happen, but it doesn't matter. And it's going to change to, oh, that this was going to happen anyway. This was inevitable. Yeah, the peace was going to happen anyway. That's what they're going to do. He's making the peace deal of a century, and they're going to say, first, it can't be done. Two, it shouldn't be. So first they say it can't be done. Then they say it shouldn't could be done. And then when it's done and it works, they're going to say, oh, well, it was going to happen inevitable because I've got my Oxford degree. My Oxford degree says that I'm smart and that this Trump orange man bad. Oh, no. It's like, no. It's a really good deal. And okay, yeah, Ukraine doesn't join NATO. But you know there's a good security guarantee? America having a share in the resources that we need in that region. That is a security guarantor. And yeah, it sucks that Ukraine loses some territory that consistently spoke Russian and voted for Russian interests for the past 20, 30 years before the war. Okay, that's a big loss, okay? And yeah, it sucks. And it never should have happened. But it happened. And it's not going to change unless, one, America actually sends military to Ukraine to fight Russia. The thing we spent 40 years trying to prevent during the Cold War, that scenario. Or Europe gets its act together and does a bunch of stuff to get people to fight Russia, which is not going to happen. I mean, the European elites have spent the past 10 years bashing the type of people who would actually sign up, who would actually be willing and able to fight a war. Yes, right wingers. That's your soldier class. Yeah, you've just been bashing for the past 40 years and calling them racist. Okay, so they might fight if you put a gun to your head. If you put a gun to their head, sure, maybe. They're not gonna be happy about it, and they're not gonna take risks because why would they die for a continent, a leadership class that hates them? And that's how they would see it. Because let's face it, the men of Europe are voting conservative. They're voting for the pro-Russia, not pro, but for the anti-war. Well, they're voting for the more Trumpian group in Europe. It's the women who are voting for the leftist mass migration crowd. I'm sorry, that sounds sexist, but it holds up in the data. So you're asking the men who don't want any of this nonsense, statistically speaking, you're fighting a war to destroy for the interest of the people who are screwing them back at home. Yeah, is that's not a great plan. So anyway, my prediction is that Russia gets Donbass and Crimea. Ukraine gets some security guarantee, gets the war to end. Zelensky might have to step down. Nah, it's gonna be negotiated. The real question is, what is Russia gonna get in addition to what they already have? Because they feel like they're winning. I feel like that might be the surprise. There might be an economic deal between the United States and Russia. I can see that happening. There might be a port in Gaza that Russia is allowed to use when that gets built in the next 5 years. Something like that could happen. I can see it. So what is my conclusion? Not only is Trump going to make a deal to make peace, he's going to get the United States to get money out of it through getting the rare earths, which, by the way, is one of the reasons he wanted Greenland, is to get a supply of rare earths, because America is pretty damn self-sufficient when it comes to resources. The one resource we don't have any of is rare earths. And if this gets us them, that's a pretty big win, especially moving forward as we go into the post-globalized world because of demographic collapse through most of the world. And everything falls apart, that's actually the cause of the whole immigration mess in Europe, is because not enough kids to sustain the system as it is. The technocrats are stupid enough to think that you can just mass immigration your way out of those problems, which one isn't working because the people coming in aren't the same people. It's the people dying off, culturally speaking. And two, it's a short-term plan anyway, because even a lot of the countries that people are migrating from, their demographics are also collapsing. They're just 50 years or so behind everybody else. So as that happens, some people, I don't know if this is going to happen. I've gotten pushed back when I brought this up at parties, but people like Peter Zahan or Malcolm Collins or other people who are thinking about demographic collapse are saying that basically globalization doesn't work. The entire economy is going to collapse worldwide, and except for a couple places, America, because of our immigration and our ability to assimilate immigrants, is actually, and plus our rednecks are in a better position than most. We have an educated class, conservative Republicans like me. Not like me, I'm not reproducing. But a lot of Republicans, intelligent Republicans, are having kids. And that does push the end for America back further. So America might be fine, but we do need resources. So we do need these Ukrainian or Greenlandian resources. It's going to be the end of the world is basically going to be America. South America is its own Christendom. And then the rest of the world is not going to be. It's going to be like the middle region, Middle East, Europe, Africa is going to be Muslim. Eastern region, I can see staying Buddhist. It's tough to get past. What's that? Burma? Burma is a shit show. There's no way that's going to. Well, Indonesia, though, is Muslim, and they have a growing population. And we'll see about East Asia. But America's in good shape, surprisingly, shockingly. But we do need the resources. Anyway, that's my rant for today. I hope you enjoyed. And cheers.